time to do the upgrade. I am replacing these 4-gauge cables with these 2-gauge cables, and I had to modify one side of these cables because this is a M10 boat and I bought M8 lugs. I had to drill out the lugs to accommodate the M10 boats. Now they fit. So we're going to swap out our negatives for these 4-gauge cables. We're going to swap them out with these 2-gauge cables right now. And if you notice, I'm keeping the 2-aught cable that's going up to the inverter. I'm keeping this guy attached or touching this bar somewhere, so we don't have to pre-charge the inverter after I rewire everything. A little bit of a tip for you to keep from having to pre-charge your system when you're rewiring stuff. Keep it touching something to keep those capacitors in your inverter charged off or topped off. All right, cables have been exchanged. You notice that I have a lot of slack. These cables that I acquired from Battery Cables USA here in Louisville, Kentucky, they're 2-foot. They are 2-foot cable or 2-foot cables instead of the 1-foot cables I had previously with 4-gauge. So I got a little bit of slack here. I think what I'm going to end up doing is moving the bus up here instead. Move it up here to take up some of that slack and the pawns. So I'm going to have to move those buses up to get rid of the slack, and I'd rather have a little bit of slack that I can take up by moving buses around than not having enough of the cable available to keep, to where the cable might be a little taut. Those 4-gauge cables were a little taut, and I'd rather keep a little bit of slack on these cables. Yeah, that's just my own personal preference. Not too much, but those 4-gauge cables were a little tight, particularly on the outer batteries. They got a little tight going up here to the bus. So now I got plenty of slack. All right, so I went ahead and took my own advice, and I moved the bus bar from down here to up here. I need to redo the inverter cable. I need to bring it up from the bottom because it's really binding right here. So I'm going to have to bring that up from the bottom. But this will allow me to take up some of that slack coming off these batteries. And I probably need to do something with the slack here to tighten it up, make it a little bit more prettier, a little bit more presentable, whatever, with the cables. But yeah, I went ahead and took my own recommendation, and moved the bus up here to the upper shelf. And I may change in my mind and move it to another location as I get this build closer and closer to completion. But for now, this is a good place for the negative side. And with that, everything's nice and tight. The 2-aught cable coming off of the bus going to the inverter, I rerouted it. The bus itself, all the individual battery cables are now tightened down. I'm going to have to figure out something down here to find some type of cable clip or something just to tidy it up a little bit so it looks a little bit more presentable. But you know, it's a personal home build, not necessarily needed, but I probably will because that's my OCD kicking in. But figure out, put some cable straps in or something, some type of tie down here to secure these cables. And then the slack, I could stuck with the 1-foot cables using 4 or 2 gauge cables, 1 feet instead of 2 feet, but this gives me a little bit more slack because, like I said, the 4 gauge cables, they were a little short. These are only 1 feet 12 inches, a little short, made it a little tight coming off of the batteries, especially when the battery on the far end over here and the far end over here getting up to the bus was a little tight. So give myself a little slack, and this actually gives me an opportunity to, once I have this rig completely built, it gives me an opportunity to sit down and reevaluate. Maybe I want to move the bus to the top of the shelves instead off to the sides or something. We'll figure it out as time goes on. I'm sure this won't be the last time you'll see this configuration. I'm sure I'll be changing it up in time. So the dust cover itself for this side, I'll have to cut out the side here because the inverter cable comes off the side here, so I'm going to have to cut an opening over here off to the side to allow the protection cover / dust cover to reattach to this side, and then we will finish up the negative side, and then we will switch over to the positive side where we will install the fuses and upgrade the cabling over there. That's coming up. All right, modification completed on the cover for the negative side. And that takes care of the negative side. Okay, on to the positive side. I have, by the way, again, to keep me from having to pre-charge, I hooked up the inverter lead directly to this last battery. The battery's already connected on the negative side, so that will keep the inverter capacitors topped off while I work on this side. And I'm going to go ahead and move the positive bus up to the second shelf as well right now. So now with the positive side, I'm just going to mount the fuse blocks right here. If you saw my previous video, there is lots of surface contact between the fuse block and the bus. Back here, lots of surface contact. The more surface contact, the better. So I decided I'm going to put the fuse blocks on the block itself, or on the bus itself. Makes it a little bit more convenient also, if you think about it, to have the fuses up here. Should something pop, it'll be a lot easier for me to locate and ID it up here than having to get on the ground or whatever and have to look at the fuses from way down below by the batteries or under this other shelf. So decided to go this route, and because I'm going this route, I actually don't need to drill out these ends, because I'm putting the cable on the end of each of the bus fuse blocks and on the battery itself. So that actually is another reason why I decided to put the blocks up here on the bus, so I can utilize M8 openings coming off of the fuse block going down to the battery. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these fuse blocks installed. Okay, the fuse holders are installed. Looks pretty good. Next up will be the cables. And I do need to move the inverter up to one of those posts as well. And I'll save the last battery for last, because it's still keeping the inverter charged up. So I am installing 100 amp fuses. I'm keeping the fuse rating less than the 4-gauge or the 2-gauge cabling rating. 2-gauge cabling is rated for 115 amps, so I got a 100 amp fuse. I probably will never ever come anywhere close to 100 amps on any one of these battery leads, but should I have a runaway situation, hopefully the fuses will take care of protecting the cables from overheating and catching things on fire. And then I can only hope that the BMS on each of the batteries will do the same thing inside the battery itself. So let's install these fuses. I'll go ahead and put the battery lead on the bus. The furthest bolt to the left, closest to the camera, will go onto the battery that's currently keeping the inverter charged up. So we're going to do this cable up here first. Now, on the specs for the fuse holders, the torque max for the boats is 75 inch-pounds, which isn't very much. So I don't have a proper torque wrench or ratchet to dial it in properly, so I'm just going to wing it. But I do know that these fuses have ceramic on the inside of them, which means if I put too much torque down on them, it's going to crack that ceramic. So I'm basically just going to give it a good snug fit and hope I don't crack anything along the way. Yep, that feels like 75 inch-pounds. Sure. Will I spec it out properly? I don't know. That requires me to go buy a torque wrench, and I really don't want to buy a torque wrench. Not especially when it's only 75 inch-pounds. It's not like foot-pounds. Foot-pounds, I'd be more adamant to go get a torque wrench. But inch-pounds, nah. Hand tighten, give it a good snug tight connection. Should suffice. If you guys know of a place I can get a torque ratchet for inch-pounds, let me know down in the comments below in case I decide to do that in the future. But for now, no. And of course, put the protection covers on each of the individual boats to protect the system from getting shorted out somehow. Now on the inverter side, I'm going to put the inverter on this side over here. I'm on the fence between a T-class or just another MRBF fuse link between the bus and the inverter. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys would recommend. And there you have it. Fuses are in line to the bus. One for each battery, 100 amps each. Again, I'm not going to come anywhere close to 100 amps off of any battery, any one particular battery, but I will have the capability should I need it. I don't think I'm going to, but should I need it, I'll have it. But for now, I'm just going to put the inverter on this boat right here and call it good. Hopefully I can do this without losing too much capacitance currently charged up inside the inverter right now. Let's go ahead and undo this. And put the inverter behind the fuse. Try to do this in one quick motion to avoid any capacitance discharge as I do this. So you might see a spark, you might not. Here we go. No spark. No spark. At least I didn't see any. If you saw a spark, please let me know down in the comments below, but I didn't see any. I think we're okay. get the inverter connected to the bus because the other 3 batteries are in line, whereas the first battery is not currently. Get that inverter secured to the bus. And then the last battery cable on this guy right here is going to the battery that I just disconnected the inverter from. And again, no spark. Nope, no spark. So there you have it. 4 MRBFs going to each battery. The fuses I'm using are 100 amp fuses for going to each battery, in line with each battery. And everything's nice and tight. On the positive side, everything's nice and tight. Got the inverter on the back side of this fuse here. Future video, future build out on this cart will be to put an inline fuse in here somewhere. Let me know, again, let me know down in the comments below. Should I put just another MRBF fuse holder here? And I'm looking at using a 150 amp fuse coming off the bus going to the inverter, or would you recommend a different type of fuse from here to the inverter? Again, this is just a 12 volt system anyway. Probably don't need anything super fancy, but let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. And just like with the negative, I might have to cut out the end of this dust cap to allow this to fit on it, but that will finish up the upgrade of this 12 volt 400 amp hour battery pack being fed into a 2000 watt inverter from Harbor Freight, Jupiter inverter from Harbor Freight. And there's my charger for the batteries. And that is it for this video. If you have any comments or suggestions, or just let me know down in the comments below, I would appreciate that. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.